Dr. Alex Carter was deep in the analysis of Kepler 442b soil samples when his laboratory door burst open without warning. He looked up from his microscope, expecting to see a maintenance drone or perhaps Commander Walsh with another impossible deadline, but instead found himself staring at Zara Lynn, the station's Altarian housekeeping staff member, wearing nothing but a work apron and an expression of absolute panic. "Dr. Carter," she said, her normally careful English heavily accented by distress. "You must help. The gardens, something terrible happens." Alex's first instinct was to look away from her state of undress, but the urgency in her voice overrode his embarrassment. Altarians, he reminded himself, had different concepts of modesty than humans. Their pale blue skin with its intricate silver markings was natural clothing enough for most purposes, and their practical culture viewed unnecessary garments as inefficient. "Zara Lynn, what's wrong? And why aren't you wearing?" "No time for clothes," she interrupted, moving closer to his workstation with the kind of desperate energy that came from genuine crisis. "The green death spreads in hydroponics. Everything dies, the oxygen plants, the food crops, everything." The words hit Alex like a physical blow. The Kepler research station's hydroponic gardens weren't just a food source, they were the primary life support system for the entire facility. If something was killing the plants that produced their oxygen and recycled their atmosphere, everyone on the station would be dead within days. "Show me," he said, abandoning his samples and grabbing his emergency field kit. "What happened to your clothes?" "Contamination protocols," Zara Lynn explained as they hurried through the station's corridors. "I was working in Section C when the death started spreading. Had to emergency dump all gear that touched the infected area." Alex noted the way other crew members stared as they passed. Not just at Zara Lynn's minimal attire, but at the unprecedented sight of the quiet Altarian housekeeper leading the station's chief xenobiologist anywhere at a run. In the 6 months since Zara Lynn had arrived as part of the Interspecies Cooperation Program, she'd maintained an almost invisible presence, efficiently managing cleaning duties while staying out of everyone's way. "How long ago did this start?" Alex asked as they reached the hydroponic section. 20 minutes, maybe 30. "Was cleaning the nutrient filters when I noticed the smell, sweet, wrong, like death mixed with flowers." They entered the garden complex, and Alex immediately understood her panic. What should have been rows of green, thriving plants looked like a botanical apocalypse. Entire sections of crops were blackened and withering, covered with a spreading fungal infection that seemed to pulse with its own malevolent life. The air carried the sickly sweet odor Zara Lynn had described, mixed with the acrid smell of dying vegetation. "My God," Alex breathed, pulling out his scanner and immediately beginning to take readings. "How fast is it spreading?" "Very fast. Started in Section C, now reaching Section B. At this rate, all gardens dead in 3-4 hours." Alex's scanner confirmed his worst fears. The contamination was unlike anything in his databases. The fungal agent was systematically targeting the specific plant species that kept them alive, breaking down cellular structures with frightening efficiency. "The automated system should have detected this," he said, checking the environmental monitoring displays. "Why didn't we get any alerts?" Zara Lynn moved to one of the monitoring stations with the familiarity of someone who understood the systems better than her job description suggested. "Sensors show all normal. Whatever this is, it hides from human detection methods. But not from you. Altarian sense is different. We feel biological distress before machines detect chemical changes." Alex watched her work at the monitoring station, noting the way her long fingers danced across controls with practiced expertise. There was something about her movements that suggested far more technical knowledge than a housekeeping position should require. "Zara Lynn, what was your training before you came here?" She hesitated, her silver eyes flickering with something between embarrassment and defiance. "Altarian Biological Systems Engineering. Advanced Certification in Symbiotic Agriculture and Atmospheric Management." Alex stared at her. "You're an engineer. Then why are you working in housekeeping? Human stations only allow Altarians in service positions." Immigration restrictions. Easier to get visa as maintenance worker than as scientist. The revelation hit Alex like a second crisis on top of the first. They had one of the galaxy's most qualified biological engineers working as cleaning staff because of bureaucratic prejudice, and now that expertise might be the only thing standing between his crew and death. Can you tell me more about this contamination? Your people have seen something like this before. Zaralyn nodded grimly. This is weapon, not natural infection. Engineered bioweapon designed to target specific plant species that humans use for life support. A weapon? Who would? Hegemony factions. They oppose human expansion, want to drive your people back to home system. Have attacked Altarian colonies with similar weapons. Alex felt the situation shift from biological emergency to potential act of war. If someone was deliberately targeting human research stations with biological weapons, the implications went far beyond their immediate survival. You know how to fight this? No principles, yes. But antidote requires techniques that human protocols probably forbid. Dangerous, unproven by your standards. Our standards are about to become irrelevant if everyone on this station suffocates. Zaralyn's expression brightened with something that might have been hope mixed with determination. Then you trust Altarian methods? Alex looked around the dying gardens, calculating how many hours of breathable air they had left if the plant stopped producing oxygen entirely. Then he looked at Zaralyn, brilliant, qualified, and possibly their only chance of survival, standing in his laboratory wearing nothing but an apron because she'd risked contamination to bring him this warning. I trust you, he said simply. What do you need? First, proper biological interface gear. Human equipment won't work for what I need to do. What exactly do you need to do? Enter symbiosis with plant systems. Become bridge between biological processes and antidote compounds. Is very intimate connection with living systems. Alex understood immediately why human protocols would forbid such techniques. The idea of biological symbiosis between sentient beings and other life forms violated several safety regulations and ethical guidelines. Is it dangerous? For me, yes. Risk of permanent biological integration, possible cellular rejection, potential consciousness transfer. And if we don't try it? Everyone dies when oxygen runs out. Alex nodded. Then we try it. What else do you need? Your human scientific equipment for monitoring vital signs, chemical analysis, environmental control. And she hesitated again. What? Trust. Complete trust. During symbiosis, I will be vulnerable, dependent on your monitoring and support. You must keep me alive while I am connected to dying systems. The weight of responsibility was staggering. Alex would be literally holding her life in his hands while she attempted something that could kill her even if it succeeded in saving everyone else. Zaralyn, I have to ask, why are you willing to risk this? You could evacuate with the rest of the crew. She looked around the dying gardens, then back at him with an expression that combined determination with something deeper. Because is right thing to do. Because your people deserve to live. And because. She paused, her silver eyes meeting his directly. Because someone must show that Altarians are partners, not just servants. Alex felt something shift in his chest, respect, gratitude, and the beginning of something else he couldn't name. This remarkable woman was willing to risk everything not just to save lives, but to prove that her people belonged in roles that matched their capabilities. Then let's get started, he said. And Zaralyn? After this is over, I'm recommending you for immediate promotion to assistant xenobiologist. Her smile could have powered the station's energy grid. First we save everyone. Then we discuss career changes. As they began gathering equipment for what might be the most dangerous biological procedure ever attempted on a human station, Alex realized that his quiet morning of soil analysis had become something far more significant, a partnership that could change not just their survival prospects, but the entire relationship between their species. And it had all started with an alien woman in an apron asking for his help. Working alongside Zara Lynn to gather equipment revealed just how much Alex had underestimated both the crisis and his unlikely partner. Her knowledge of the station's biological systems was encyclopedic, and her understanding of the contamination's behavior patterns went far beyond what any housekeeping position should have provided. The weapon targets nitrogen-fixing bacteria first, she explained while calibrating sensors that Alex hadn't even known existed in the hydroponics bay. Breaks down symbiotic relationships between plants and beneficial microorganisms. Without bacterial partners, plants cannot process nutrients, oxygen production fails. How do you know all this? Hegemony attacked Altarian research station on Kepler 438c 2 years ago. I was part of response team. She paused, her hands stilling on the equipment. Lost many friends before we developed countermeasures. Alex studied her profile as she worked, noting the way her silver marking seemed to pulse slightly when she concentrated. You were on a response team. Senior biological engineer for Altarian Emergency Services. Specialized in bioweapon remediation and atmospheric restoration. Then why? Why am I cleaning floors on human station? Zara Lynn's laugh held no humor. Because human immigration system does not recognize Altarian certifications. Because your people think we are good for manual labor but not scientific work. Because it was either take service job or stay home while my people's expertise could help prevent attacks like this. The bitterness in her voice was understandable, but Alex also heard something else, determination that had kept her moving forward despite the bureaucratic obstacles. That's going to change, he said firmly. After today, no one will question Altarian capabilities. If we survive today. They moved deeper into the contaminated sections, where the fungal spread had accelerated beyond Alex's worst projections. Entire growing towers were collapsing as their structural integrity failed, and the sweet sick smell of biological decay was becoming overwhelming. It's adapting, Zara Lynn observed, scanning the contamination patterns with equipment that definitely wasn't standard housekeeping gear. Each new section it enters, weapon learns better ways to attack plant defenses. Learns? You mean it's evolving? Not evolving, communicating. Bioweapon has distributed intelligence, shares information between infected areas. Very sophisticated. Alex felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's environmental systems. How do we fight something that adapts faster than we can respond? With something that adapts even faster. Zara Lynn moved to the central growing tower, placing her hands flat against the nutrient distribution system. Altarian symbiosis allows real-time biological communication. Can share countermeasures at cellular level, faster than weapon can adapt. Explain how this works. Altarian nervous system can interface directly with plant neural networks. Yes, plants have consciousness, just different from animal awareness. When I connect, I become part of garden ecosystem, can introduce antidote compounds and coordinate immune responses across all connected systems. Alex watched her prepare the interface equipment with growing amazement. The Altarians didn't just tend biological systems, they could become part of them, creating partnerships between species that human science was only beginning to understand. What are the risks to you personally? During full symbiosis, boundary between my consciousness and plant awareness becomes flexible. Risk of losing individual identity, becoming permanently integrated with garden consciousness. Also risk of cellular rejection. My body might treat connection as foreign invasion. And if the symbiosis fails while you're connected? Could die. Or become something not quite Altarian, not quite plant. Have heard of cases where engineer became hybrid consciousness, alive but changed beyond recognition. Alex studied the determination in her silver eyes, the steady hands that showed no tremor despite the risks she was describing. Zara Lynn, no one would blame you for not attempting this. It's beyond any reasonable expectation. Is not about expectation, she interrupted gently. Is about what is right. Your people are not my enemies, you are neighbors, colleagues, potential friends. Neighbors help neighbors. Even when neighbors have treated you as second-class citizens. Especially then. Shows that Altarians are what we claim to be, partners in building better galaxy. Her answer humbled him. Despite months of being undervalued and underutilized, she was willing to risk everything to save people who had never truly seen her capabilities. What do you need from me during the procedure? Monitor my vital signs, maintain optimal environmental conditions, and be ready to force disconnection if symbiosis becomes dangerous. Most important, if I begin losing individual awareness, you must bring me back. How? Talk to me. Use my name, remind me who I am separate from garden consciousness. Altarian identity is partly maintained through social connection. Your voice may be what keeps me anchored to individual existence. The intimacy of what she was asking struck Alex with unexpected force. She would be literally trusting him with her sense of self, relying on his voice to maintain her identity while she merged with alien biological systems. I'll be here, he promised. However long it takes. Zaralyn began the connection process, placing specialized biointerface devices at her temples and wrists while Alex monitored the readings that would tell him whether she was succeeding or dying. Her silver markings began to glow more brightly as the symbiosis deepened, and her breathing shifted to match rhythms Alex didn't recognize. Beginning integration, she said, her voice taking on an odd harmonic quality. Can feel garden consciousness, so much pain, so much death, but also strength, will to survive. Alex watched her vital signs fluctuate wildly as her nervous system adapted to the alien connection. Zaralyn, how are you feeling? Feel everything. Every dying plant, every struggling root system, every bacterial colony fighting for survival. Is overwhelming but beautiful. Garden wants to live, Alex. Wants to grow and breathe and feed people. Can you introduce the antidote compounds? Yes, beginning synthesis now. Teaching plant immune systems to recognize and neutralize bioweapon. Sharing resistance across all connected systems. The monitors showed her body chemistry changing in ways that should have been impossible, her cells apparently learning to produce compounds that didn't exist in normal Altarian biology. It's working, Alex breathed, watching as contamination readings began to drop in several sections. The spread is slowing. Good, but symbiosis deeper than expected. Garden consciousness very strong, very welcoming. Difficult to maintain individual awareness. Alex heard the dreamy quality entering her voice and felt alarm spike through him. Zaralyn, stay with me. Remember who you are, senior biological engineer, survivor of the Kepler 438C attack, the woman who came to my lab wearing nothing but an apron because she was too brave to waste time on proper clothing. She laughed, the sound carrying both human and plant-like qualities. Remember that, yes. Remember you, looking so shocked and trying not to stare. Was very endearing. Good. Keep talking to me. Tell me what you're experiencing. Is like, being part of vast living network. Every plant connected, sharing nutrients and information and, love. Yes, garden loves the people it feeds. Wants to keep you safe and healthy. That's beautiful, but you need to stay yourself within that network. Trying, but is so peaceful here. So much simpler than individual consciousness, with all its worries and fears and loneliness. Alex recognized the danger immediately. Zaralyn, listen to my voice. You're not alone in individual consciousness, you have friends, colleagues, a future beyond this garden. You have work to do, people to save, a promotion waiting for you when this is over. Promotion? Assistant xenobiologist, remember? First Altarian scientist on a human station. Think about what that means for your people, for interspecies cooperation. Her vital signs stabilized slightly. Yes, important work. Cannot abandon that responsibility. That's right. The garden needs you to stay yourself so you can help other gardens, other stations, other opportunities for our peoples to work together. For the next 2 hours, Alex maintained constant communication with Zara Lynn as she fought both the bioweapon and the seductive pull of plant consciousness. Gradually, the contamination readings dropped to safe levels, the dying plants began to recover, and the sweet smell of decay gave way to the clean scent of healthy vegetation. Antidote synthesis complete, Zara Lynn announced, her voice sounding more recognizably herself. All garden systems showing resistance to bioweapon. Beginning disconnection process. Take it slowly. No rush. Actually, much prefer being individual consciousness. Garden is beautiful, but I am Altarian, meant to move between worlds rather than root in one place. When she finally opened her eyes and sat up from the biointerface, Alex felt relief flood through him. She was pale and exhausted, but unmistakably herself. How do you feel? Tired. Grateful. And... She smiled, ready for proper clothes and very large meal. Alex laughed, realizing that somewhere during the crisis, his professional respect for Zara Lynn had become something much more personal. She had risked everything to save people who had never properly valued her, and in doing so, she had shown him what true courage looked like. Zara Lynn, what you did today. What we did today, she corrected. Could not have succeeded without your monitoring and support. Was true partnership. The first of many, I hope. Her smile could have powered the station's energy grid. Yes, I think so too. The success of Zara Lynn's symbiotic intervention saved the station's immediate crisis, but their investigation into the bioweapon's origins revealed a threat far larger than one contaminated garden. As they worked together to analyze the weapon's composition and trace its deployment method, Alex discovered that his partnership with Zara Lynn was evolving beyond professional collaboration into something that challenged both their assumptions about interspecies relationships. The delivery system was sophisticated, Zara Lynn reported, studying samples under equipment that she had modified with Altarian techniques. Bioweapon introduced through water recycling system, timed to activate during peak plant growth cycle for maximum damage. Which means someone with detailed knowledge of our operations planted it, Alex concluded grimly. This wasn't a random attack, it was targeted sabotage. They had been working together for 18 hours straight, subsisting on energy bars and determination while the rest of the station's crew remained in partial quarantine until they could confirm the contamination was completely neutralized. The isolation had created an unexpected intimacy. For the first time since arriving at the station, Zara Lynn was working at her actual level of expertise rather than pretending to be simple maintenance staff. Alex, she said quietly, there is something else. The bioweapon signature matches attacks on 3 other human research stations in this sector over past 6 months. 3 others. Why wasn't this information shared? Was classified by human authorities. Officially, the previous incidents were equipment failures or natural contamination events. Alex felt a chill of recognition. Cover-ups. Someone in human command structure doesn't want the pattern to be visible. Or someone wants colonies to appear vulnerable to encourage abandonment of expansion efforts. The implications were staggering. If the hegemony had infiltrated human command structures enough to suppress intelligence about biological attacks, then the threat went far beyond individual stations. We need to document everything, Alex said. Create a complete record of the attack, the response, and the evidence of systematic targeting. Dangerous for both of us. If human authorities are compromised, exposing pattern could make us targets. Alex looked at Zara Lynn, exhausted but determined, brilliant despite being officially relegated to menial work, willing to risk her life for people who had never properly valued her contributions. The courage she had shown wasn't just about bioweapon response, it was about refusing to accept a system that wasted her capabilities. Then we'll be targets together, he said. Someone needs to stand up to this, and apparently we're the ones who have the evidence. We, she repeated, and something in her tone made him look at her more closely. Is that a problem? No, is unexpected. In my experience, humans prefer to take credit for solutions rather than share recognition with Altarian partners. Then you've been working with the wrong humans. Zara Lynn's silver markings brightened slightly, a physiological response that Alex was learning indicated strong positive emotions. Perhaps I have. Their conversation was interrupted by an emergency communication from Commander Walsh, the station's administrator who had been coordinating with Earth Command about the crisis. Dr. Carter, I need you in my office immediately. We've received new orders regarding the contamination incident. Alex and Zara Lynn exchanged glances. Together, Alex said firmly. Zara Lynn's expertise was crucial to resolving the crisis. She should be part of any debriefing. The pause before Walsh responded was telling. Dr. Carter, the orders specifically mentioned that all information about the incident is to remain classified. Non-essential personnel shouldn't be involved in further discussions. Zara Lynn isn't non-essential personnel. She's the biological engineer who saved all our lives. Another pause. Bring her if you think it's necessary. But understand that classification protocols will apply to everyone involved. The meeting that followed was everything Alex had feared. Commander Walsh, flanked by 2 Earth Command security officers who had arrived on an emergency transport, presented orders that essentially classified the entire incident as a research accident and forbade any communication about biological weapons or systematic attacks. The official report will state that contamination resulted from experimental error during plant breeding research, one of the security officers announced. All personnel will sign confidentiality agreements and undergo debriefing to ensure consistent information security. That's completely false, Alex protested. This was a deliberate attack using sophisticated biological weapons. Covering it up will leave other stations vulnerable. Dr. Carter, you're not privy to the larger security picture. Earth Command has determined that the most effective response to these incidents is to avoid creating panic or providing intelligence to hostile factions. Alex felt anger building in his chest. So other research teams will die because we're too afraid to admit we're under attack. Dr. Carter, the second security officer spoke for the first time, your cooperation with this classification is not optional. Nor is your colleagues. The way he said, colleague, while looking at Zara Lynn made Alex's hands clench into fists. The dismissive tone carried all the bureaucratic prejudice that had kept her talents wasted in a service position. Zara Lynn has expertise that could prevent future attacks, Alex said carefully. Her knowledge of hegemony biological weapons is probably the most comprehensive in human space. Which makes her a potential security risk as well as an asset, the first officer replied. Non-human personnel with detailed knowledge of our vulnerabilities require additional scrutiny. Alex saw Zara Lynn's expression remain carefully neutral, but her silver markings dimmed in a way that indicated hurt and anger being carefully controlled. Zara Lynn risked her life to save this station, Alex said, his voice growing harder. Questioning her loyalty is both insulting and counterproductive. Dr. Carter, your personal feelings about the Altarian are noted, but they don't change security protocols. Personal feelings. Alex realized that the security officers had misinterpreted his defense of Zara Lynn as romantic attachment rather than professional respect. The assumption was both wrong and revealing about their attitudes toward interspecies relationships. The classification stands, Commander Walsh said, clearly uncomfortable with the entire situation. All personnel will sign the agreements and submit to debriefing. That includes you, Miss Zara Lynn. The use of her first name without any acknowledgement of her professional qualifications was a final insult that made Alex's decision for him. Commander, I formally request that Zara Lynn be promoted to Assistant Xenobiologist, effective immediately. Her performance during this crisis exceeds any qualification standard, and her expertise is clearly needed for station security. Dr. Carter, personnel decisions are not made during crisis situations. This isn't a crisis decision. It's a competency recognition that should have happened months ago. The security officers exchanged glances that suggested they were evaluating Alex's cooperation level. Dr. Carter, your advocacy for non-human personnel advancement could be seen as compromising your judgment about security matters. Alex felt something shift inside him, a line being crossed that he couldn't uncross. My judgment about security matters is that wasting qualified expertise because of species prejudice makes us more vulnerable, not less. Dr. Carter, the first security officer's voice carried warning, you're approaching the line of insubordination. Then let me cross it clearly, Alex said, moving to stand beside Zara Lynn. I refuse to sign any classification agreement that prevents me from reporting the truth about biological weapons attacks. I refuse to participate in a cover-up that will get people killed. And I refuse to allow Zara Lynn's contributions to be minimized or ignored. The silence that followed was profound. Commander Walsh looked like he wanted to disappear, while the security officers appeared to be calculating whether Alex represented a manageable problem or a serious threat to their operation. Dr. Carter, the second officer said finally, you're making this very difficult for everyone. No, Zara Lynn spoke for the first time since entering the room, her voice carrying the kind of quiet authority that made everyone pay attention. Dr. Carter is making this very simple. He is choosing truth over convenience, competence over prejudice, partnership over hierarchy. She moved to stand directly beside Alex, her silver markings bright with determination. I also refuse to sign agreement that prevents reporting of biological weapons attacks. My people have lost too many lives to hegemony weapons to participate in cover-up that leaves others vulnerable. Miss Zara Lynn, you're not in a position to refuse anything. Your visa status depends on cooperation with Earth Command directives. Then my visa status will have to change, Alex said firmly. I'm formally requesting asylum protection for Zara Lynn as a biological weapons expert whose knowledge is crucial to human security interests. The security officers stared at him. Dr. Carter, you don't have authority to grant asylum. No, but I have authority to recommend it. And I have documentation proving that her expertise just saved an entire research station. Alex realized that somewhere during the confrontation, his professional respect for Zara Lynn had crystallized into something much stronger. He was willing to risk his career, his security clearance, and his future to protect both her and the truth she represented. What you're suggesting could end both your careers, Commander Walsh said quietly. Then we'll find new careers, Zara Lynn said, taking Alex's hand in a gesture that was both supportive and unmistakably personal. Together, if necessary. Looking down at their joined hands, his human, hers Altarian, both committed to principles that mattered more than convenience, Alex realized that his partnership with Zara Lynn had become something that transcended professional collaboration. Together, he agreed. Definitely together. The consequences of Alex and Zara Lynn's defiance came swiftly, but not in the way either had expected. Within hours of their refusal to sign the classification agreements, they received word that Earth Command was sending a special investigative team to review both the bioweapon incident and their handling of it. What arrived, however, was not the punishment detail they anticipated, but a group of officials who had been quietly investigating the pattern of cover-ups that Alex and Zara Lynn had uncovered. Dr. Carter, Miss Zara Lynn, Director Sarah Kim of Earth Command Internal Affairs introduced herself with the kind of professional courtesy that suggested they were witnesses rather than suspects. We understand you have documentation regarding biological weapons attacks on human research stations. We do, Alex replied carefully, uncertain whether this was genuine investigation or elaborate entrapment. Along with evidence that previous incidents have been systematically misclassified. We're very interested in that evidence. There have been questions about information suppression that your incident has brought to official attention. What followed was the most thorough debriefing Alex had ever experienced, with Zara Lynn serving not as a peripheral witness but as a primary expert whose knowledge of hegemony biological weapons proved crucial to understanding the scope of the threat they faced. The attack patterns show clear escalation, Zara Lynn explained, displaying her analysis on the conference room's holographic projectors. Each incident targeted different plant species, different delivery methods, different timing. They are systematically testing human vulnerabilities. And preparing for something larger, Director Kim concluded grimly. How long before they move from individual stations to major colonies? Based on testing patterns, estimate 6 months to full deployment of colony-killing weapons. The revelation sent shockwaves through the investigative team. What Alex and Zaralyn had uncovered wasn't just evidence of isolated attacks, it was proof of systematic preparation for biological warfare on a scale that could threaten human expansion throughout the sector. Dr. Carter, Miss Zaralyn, Director Kim said after reviewing their complete documentation, Earth Command owes you both an apology and a debt of gratitude. Your refusal to participate in the cover-up may have prevented a catastrophe. What about the officials who ordered the classification? Alex asked. Under investigation. Preliminary evidence suggests infiltration by hegemony sympathizers, possibly extending to senior command levels. The vindication was satisfying, but Alex found himself more interested in what came next. Director, what happens to our research now? That depends on what you want to happen. Earth Command is establishing a new biological defense initiative, specifically focused on countering hegemony weapons. We need experts who understand both the threats and the solutions. Director Kim's gaze moved between Alex and Zaralyn with obvious calculation. We're particularly interested in the symbiotic countermeasures that Miss Zaralyn demonstrated. Nothing in our databases suggested such techniques were possible. Because you never asked Altarian scientists, Zaralyn said with gentle firmness. My people have been developing symbiotic technologies for centuries, but human authorities assumed we were only good for manual labor. That assumption is about to change dramatically. The Biological Defense Initiative will be a joint human-Altarian program, with full recognition of Altarian scientific credentials and expertise. Alex felt excitement building as he realized what Director Kim was offering. You want us to lead the program? We want you to build it. Dr. Carter as Director of Human Research, Ms. Zaralyn as Director of Symbiotic Technologies, working as equal partners with full authority over research directions and personnel decisions. The offer was everything Alex could have hoped for professionally, but he found himself looking at Zaralyn with concerns that went beyond career advancement. Their partnership had evolved into something personal that might be complicated by formal professional equality. Director Kim, Zaralyn said, such position would require significant time commitments, extensive travel, close working relationships. Yes, it would. Is that a problem? Alex and Zaralyn exchanged glances that held months of growing respect, shared crisis, and feelings that neither had fully acknowledged. Actually, Alex said slowly, it sounds perfect. 6 months later, Dr. Alex Carter and Dr. Zaralyn Hayes stood in the laboratory complex of the newly established Kepler Biological Defense Center, watching their joint research teams test countermeasures that combined human technology with Altarian symbiotic techniques. The center had become a model for interspecies scientific cooperation, with researchers from a dozen different civilizations working together to develop defenses against biological warfare. The Henderson Station deployment was completely successful, Alex reported during their weekly briefing. The symbiotic immune system we developed neutralized the hegemony weapon before it could establish infection. And the Altarian human research team performed flawlessly, Zaralyn added. No integration problems, no communication difficulties, no hierarchical conflicts. Director Kim, who had become their primary advocate within Earth Command, smiled with obvious satisfaction. The program has exceeded every projection. More importantly, it's changing how both our civilizations approach interspecies cooperation. After the formal meeting ended, Alex and Zaralyn walked together through the center's experimental gardens, where plants from dozens of worlds grew in carefully maintained ecosystems that served as living laboratories for their research. Any regrets? Alex asked, noting how the afternoon light played across Zaralyn's silver markings he now knew reflected her emotional states with subtle beauty. About what? Giving up housekeeping for a career in dangerous biological research. Zaralyn laughed, the sound carrying the music that had first drawn his attention during their crisis together. Only regret is that it took crisis to reveal what partnership could accomplish. Speaking of partnership, Alex said, stopping beside a flowering tree that combined earth roses with Altarian crystal blooms, I've been thinking about our working relationship. What about it? I think it's perfect the way it is. Professional equality, shared authority, complete trust, and... He paused, suddenly uncertain despite everything they'd been through together. And I love you, he said simply. Not just as a research partner or a colleague or a brilliant scientist, but as the woman who burst into my laboratory wearing nothing but an apron because saving lives was more important than modesty. Zara Lynn's markings brightened to their most luminous silver, and her smile could have powered the entire research center. I love you too. Have been hoping you would realize it. How long have you known? Since you chose to trust Altarian methods over human protocols. Since you defended my expertise to authority figures who wanted to dismiss me. Since you were willing to risk your career for principles that mattered more than convenience. Alex pulled her closer, marveling at how natural it felt to love someone from another world, how right their partnership seemed on every level from professional to personal. So what happens now? Now we continue building something unprecedented, Zara Lynn said, gesturing toward the research center where human and Altarian scientists worked side by side. In the laboratory and in life. Think we can make it work? Interspecies marriage, joint research leadership, saving the galaxy from biological warfare? I think, Zara Lynn said, rising on her toes to kiss him beneath the hybrid flowers that symbolized what became possible when different species chose cooperation over isolation, that we have already proven anything is possible when the right people choose to trust each other. Looking around at the research center they had built together. A place where differences were celebrated rather than feared, where expertise was valued regardless of its source, where love had grown from crisis into something that strengthened rather than complicated their work. Alex realized that their story had become something larger than personal romance. They had created a model for the kind of galaxy where hegemony extremism couldn't take root, where cooperation produced better solutions than any single species could achieve alone, and where love truly could bridge any gap between different worlds. And it had all started with an alien woman asking for help at exactly the moment when help was most needed, wearing nothing but an apron and the courage to trust that someone would see past appearances to the expertise and heart beneath. In the distance, their research teams continued their vital work, protected by the knowledge that somewhere in the galaxy, two people had chosen partnership over prejudice and proven that the most important discoveries often came from the most unexpected encounters. The future they were building together was one where no crisis would ever again be faced alone, where every species' strengths could contribute to solutions that benefited everyone, and where love between different worlds was not just possible but essential to the survival and growth of galactic civilization itself.